Is it refreshing to hear us talking about football, Jeff?
Yeah, that was beautiful. I really enjoyed that. It seems like a long time ago that we've been able to talk about anything with any sanity, but I've got to tell you, I was a little disturbed to see what I saw just a moment ago on Twitter. I saw Hollywood, a.k.a. Stan,
yes.
A picture of him with his Big Ten Network buds at Ohio State practice, sitting at the podium, at the stage. And if I'm not mistaken, he was wearing shorts.
Yes, he's wearing shorts right now.
The magic of TV, baby.
I get it if you're in the radio studio, but if you're going to be on TV and you're going to hang, I wasn't sure if those were your legs or you're riding a chicken.
That's right.
No, my legs look pretty good, Jeff. I don't know what you're talking about.
So, Jeff, take me back in your history, and I'm trying to get into the mind of one of the people that are on the working group. You were on the search committee when Jim Tressel got hired, and I'm sure everybody is wanting media people to find out, hey, Jeff Logan, do you know anything? Same thing with these people. Let me ask you, how do they deal with that? Is it difficult at all to, whether it's family, friends, or whatever, that want to talk to some of these people about what they may know and how their day's been? How do you handle that?
Well, first of all, Matt, I recall that as being an absolute honor, but a crazy moment in my life. And I was there as the standing president of the Varsity Alumni Association, selected to represent former players, if you will, on that search committee. And what I found out was a couple of things. Number one, the incredible pressure of trying to make sure you're asking all the right questions and trying to analyze the information as best you can to be able to make the right recommendation. But I also remember the people reaching out. Think about your daily life, just people that you would have telephone conversations with from time to time, and quadruple it by 1,000 in terms of people that are reaching out to you and picking up the phone and calling, hey, Jeff, hey, just checking in to see what's going on. Hey, and by the way, and it would be one of those things where you haven't heard from this person in 3 years. And now all of a sudden they're wanting to get the inside information on what's going on. So there was an incredible amount of pressure to not leak any kind of information out there, at least on the committee that we were working on. And I know that that's one of the big challenges. These are some pretty high-profile individuals, but they have people in their inner circle too, Matt, that I'm sure are respecting their position but still wanting to know what's going on.
Okay, from your experience on a committee like we're seeing that's doing, theirs is an investigation, yours was a job search. When the dust settles, what happens? Is there discussion? Did you have discussion among people? I like this guy as a group. Are they going to do that? Have the evidence placed? Discuss things? What do you anticipate? What do you think will happen at the end of this thing?
Well, I think the thing that we came to realize very quickly, and we had a lot of wide open discussion about a variety of different things, not only in terms of what we were looking for, but what we had witnessed in terms of maybe some of those interviews, and not so much like being on a jury and trying to go through court proceedings and everything else, but just trying to gather all the information. But I think the thing that I remember more than anything else, Matt, and I think it is true with respect to this committee as well, is that you have absolutely, when it's all over and done with, no power. You are not making the decision for this big animal, the university, under any circumstances. And I believe that this committee, much like we were as a search committee looking for that head football coach, we made our recommendations. But ultimately, it was clear to us, and I think it'll be clear to them, that the decisions are going to be made above the committee level. They will take into account all of whatever the committee came up with. But the powers to be are going to make ultimately that final decision. And that's the Board of Trustees, who this committee was formed to report back to.
Okay, so you mentioned the pressure that you felt at that time. Is there pressure for this committee? I mean, a lot of the national voices have already made up their mind about Zach Smith and Urban Meyer, covered it up, and he should be fired. Locally, It's the opposite. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we had a rally last night for Urban Meyer. Now, it wasn't very many people, but there's a petition to sign Urban Meyer. Is it hard to block out for this committee? And I suppose you have to block all that stuff out, right? Is it difficult? Do you feel pressure in that vein?
Well, if you're entering into this with the anticipation you're going to try and make everybody happy, you have no chance of having that occur. And I think what the committee needs to understand, what we needed to understand, we were selecting the next football coach for Ohio State, is what are we doing today that is going to make our program better for the future? And I think that if there's anything that comes from this, it'll be a better set of controls, a better understanding about how things like this are communicated, and I think you can get into the. I don't know if it's into the swing of just kind of doing things the way we've always done them because that's the way we've always done them. And I think that's why you need to take an introspective look into who you are and what you're all about. So when this thing clears out, however it goes, I can promise you that there's going to be some new controls in place, some new reporting in place, because the pendulum, anytime compliance comes in, anytime there's a ruling like this, in whichever way it goes, the pendulum always swings too far. And so it's going to be awful around Ohio State for a time to come, just simply because everybody's, you cannot keep everybody happy, regardless of what decision that you make.
Visiting with our best Buckeye coverage analyst, Jeff Logan, who's been on one of these committees. His was in the job search for Jim Tressel. This one obviously dealing with something significantly different in that they're investigating Urban Meyer and should he be retained as coach and those questions. Stan and I were talking about this last hour, and this is going to sound like a bit slimy, but I don't mean it to sound cold, but one of the things that I keep hearing and seeing we've had people tweet at us, well, if Urban Meyer were a 500 coach, he'd be gone. And I'm like, well, yeah, probably. The fact that he has a 73-8 record and has done a great job winning football games probably does give him more latitude. Does that make sense? Should his record factor into this decision?
Well, it's a great question, Matt, and I think that there's probably only one or two guys in the country that would be in a classification as the best at their business, and that would be Urban Meyer and Nick Saban. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. There's some fringe guys, but these are the two at the very top. What I want people to and I don't think the decision will be made on won and loss record to answer your question, but what I want people to understand, and my biggest fear when we hired Urban Meyer, and I've said this to him face to face, was after 5 years or so, what are we going to look like in a program? Because there was no question in my mind we would win, and we would win big, and we would be very proud of what our one-loss record would be. But are we going to do it the right way? Are we going to have a program that's going to continue on in the vein in which we're so proud of it, in terms of our traditions, in terms of our integrity on a go-forward basis? Because I didn't know the man before he got here, and we got a changed man when he came here. He was different from the guy that was down in Florida, in my opinion. And if you look out at some of the things that Urban Meyer has done with respect to his kids in the program, the Real Life Wednesdays program, the internship program, the job fairs program, the getting these kids ready to have their degree, have a job when they're done, the whole idea is when the applause stops, how are you going to adjust? And, I think one of the things that, forget about the record, I think what Urban Meyer has provided in terms of that kind of support to our student athletes is immeasurable. And I think that's one of the things that I at least have comfort in the fact that if this goes the direction that Urban Meyer is no longer our football coach, I am not going to feel as though he pillaged our program in order for his own success. I believe there are some things that have been put in place that will be continued on for decades.
All right, last thing I got to ask you. I mean, you do know Urban a bit, have had some times with him, just leisurely times like golfing and whatnot.
Yep.
I have to ask you, one of the reasons we're in this position is his performance in Chicago, which he acknowledged in his statement. I mean, he, saying politely, bent the truth, saying it bluntly, lied. Knowing him as you do, are you surprised that he went that direction, or can you formulate any opinion as to why he did what he did in Chicago?
My personal opinion, and it is only my opinion, is that Urban Meyer answered a question very quickly, and much like he does with the media, a lot of times he's pretty blunt and pretty direct, and probably needs to be more Belichickian in terms of his responses. And being part of the media now, Matt, I got a bulletin for you. If he survives this, and I hope that he does, if he survives this, press conferences are going to be a whole hell of a lot different than they've been in the past, because it's going to be yes, no, and maybe from this point forward for quite some time, and I think that's a real shame.
All right. That is Jeff Logan. Appreciate it, Jeff. I look forward to the day when it's a Saturday and we're talking about a football game instead of this stuff. But
all right, well, do me a favor though. Let me know what the dress code is for because I don't want to be caught overdressed or underdressed for a performance like Stan did today. And if that's what you're allowed to do, I'm all in.
See, Jeff, you're getting it all twisted. It has nothing to do with what you're wearing or how you look. It's about what you say, baby.
Well, then do me a favor and make sure you protect those legs behind that thing, so I don't have to look at them on Twitter.
Somebody must have been behind the set, so they were in a bad spot. These legs are good.
Yeah, you were in a bad spot, is what you do. So,
exactly.
Hey, good being with you. Enjoy the summer, guys, and look forward to the football season.